but just to be perfectly upfront, we usually do this stuff from Brad's back porch in person. So this whole technology thing,
Okay.
there may be a trap or two waiting on us. Let's see what happens here. All right. Shall we, Bradford?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Shiftless, the show, podcast, whatever it may be. Are we fading like we're supposed to there?
Not really, but it's okay.
It didn't fade.
We'll fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post. Hey, and we even tested that, so it doesn't fade. I think that's what we ran into back in the past. Welcome to Shiftless, the podcast. It's only about bicycles and technology failures. Oh, I've got a movie for you, Brad.
Talk to me. Happy Gilmore 2? So good.
Sinners. Have you seen Sinners?
No, but I've heard nothing but good things.
You got to let it do its thing. But
Yeah,
once
that's
it
fair.
gets there, once it heats up, also go into it cold. Don't watch any trailers or anything. But anyway,
Yeah, I don't watch
back to
cold.
bikes. Hey, we are like on technology today. We are not at Casa Verde. We are not on the back porch. Well, Brad's at Casa Verde. we have an international guest today. It's officially international, right, Brad?
That's right. That's right.
Fantastic.
He's from Canada.
From the Canadians.
Yeah.
Tell you what, since you were really the instigator of this one, I'll let you introduce our guest today.
Man, I'm stoked to talk to this guy, Mr. Dan Durston of Durston Gear, just killing the game when it comes to tents and backpacking, ultralight backpacking and such. That scared me.
All right.
Loud.
All right. Well, I was going for this. Oh, that's pretty weak. That's weak. There we go. That's a little better. That's a little better. All right.
Sorry, Dan. We're a very low budget production here.
Yeah, no worries.
If you can't tell, we really don't take ourselves seriously. So I hope that doesn't hurt your feelings at all.
So before we get into your tents, I just want to tell you what got me interested in your tents. I'm normally a hammock guy, bike packing, a lot of bike packing. I've been in a hammock for probably the past 10, 12 years plus, because in Texas, it serves me well, even in Arkansas and Oklahoma and all the surrounding areas. And I don't like sleeping on the ground. It's nothing personal. It's just, you can set up on wet ground or, wherever, uneven ground, rocky, it doesn't matter as long as you have 2 trees or 2 support poles. But I have ambitions of in October doing a race across Texas, which is 1,000 miles. And when you get into West Texas, there's no trees to be had. So it forced me to go down the rabbit hole of tents, whereas before I've been not a tent guy. And luckily, I saw your tent, I believe the first time on, is it Dan Becker?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw your tent on there and I was like, this is exactly what I want. And he just glazed you so hard. I was like, he's got to be in on the take or something here. And so it forced me to start looking even more and start watching other videos. And I couldn't find a single flaw with this tent. It was one of those things I added it to my cart maybe 3 times before I actually pushed send. And then, of course, when that happened, they were already sold out and I had to wait for the next shipment. So the anticipation just built even further. And I have to tell you that I was more than floored when I got it, that I was like, I was mad at myself because I didn't push send before.
Yeah.
And I've only slept in it once because it's been 78 degrees here at night.
102
Fahrenheit.
during the day.
Yeah. But I am blown away by all of the tiny little touches and how well this thing is made and how roomy it is for the weight it is, and not to mention how small it packs down. Because, I'm sure it's the same with backpacking as it is with bike packing, is weight is kind of a hindrance, but volume is a big thing as well. And the option of the short tent poles is a huge addition to bike packing as well, because that's one of the typical considerations of where do you carry 17-inch poles on a bicycle without damaging them and stuff. So big fan. So I just wanted to get that out of the way and tell you where my kind of delve into tents came from and where I am.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
you have a question for him, Brad?
that's awesome. I appreciate you checking out the tent, and I probably have some things to learn from you too about how bike packers use tents, because I sort of know, but I don't. There's a maybe you don't have to get into it right away, but there's a few areas I'm like I don't know why. I know that they all want these short poles, but
Yeah.
I don't understand. Is there not a spot on a bike you could just put longer poles? Like I see a bike and there's a lot of long tubes on the bike frame. Why can't you put
There is.
poles like down the rear triangle or something? I don't.
You could, but I mean, the problem is if they're exposed, then they're going to get exposed to the elements, and a lot of times,
Snags.
yeah, snags, and especially with carbon fiber poles. If you're going through a rocky area or something and you wreck and your poles are exposed, typically, you want to put them up front where you can see them too, because that's the other thing is if you had them on the back of your bike and they fall off and you get to camp, you don't have tent poles, and I'm sure that wouldn't
Yep.
happen, but
That's tricky.
I mean, I don't know. The short poles are just easier to put away. That being said, I have bike packed 150 miles with a fly rod and a fly tube, and I just put that in a harness on the front of my bike. I mean, I guess I could. It just seems more manageable having short poles.
Yeah, like you may as well. Like the 30 grams is not nothing, and then why not just have them be convenient? Yeah, we're liking the short poles a lot. Originally we had the regular poles, and then bike packers mostly, but also a few other use groups, but mostly bike packers want the short poles, and so we made them, and then we get them and we're like, oh, these are pretty sweet. Like they're just because
They really are.
even the tent, we make a different sack for it. The regular version of the tent comes in a longer sack, and then you see the tent in the short sack, and it just looks so much smaller. It is like that. Yeah, volume is important too, and it's nice for I come from a backpacking background, but to store it sideways in your backpack is nice. You can just sort of put it sideways at the bottom, and then it's not in the way all day.
Yeah.
So the short poles are kind of this thing that has gotten more popular than I expected. We were only originally ordering maybe 20% short poles, and the interest is more like 50-50. So it's they're
I mean,
a little hard to get rid of.
ultimately, the short poles just give more options for packing, is what it boils down to. It's more flexibility. Traditionally, for bike packing, people either mount the poles on the front handlebar, and if people are using the curved drop bars, there's limited space in between where your levers and everything are. The other one is beneath the top tube. And
Okay.
for a larger bike, a large or an extra large bike, usually not a problem. But particularly smaller riders, females that are on mediums, smalls, or even extra smalls, that top tube gets narrower or shorter and shorter. So a 17 or 18-inch pole isn't going to fit in there for them.
Yeah.
And that's the short answer. But just flexibility is really the main thing. More options is better.
Would you say for bike packers like 80% are on the handlebars, or what sort of versus the top tube, or what?
So I'm sure I keep wanting to say bike packing, so it's going to be hard for me to say backpacking. With backpacking, I've watched a bunch of people do loadouts and stuff, and it's very personal. And bike packing, I think, tends to be that way too, because unlike with backpacking on a bike, you have multiple bags. The biggest thing I always try to do is set all my stuff up the same way every time. Like I'm sure you do the same thing with your backpack is, put your food here and your clothes here and your shelter here and stuff like that. So, I mean, I always put all of my shelter on the front.
Okay.
And typically that's a hammock and an underquilt, rain fly, maybe a top quilt and a pillow, and then suspension. And so with the tent, that's my ambition as well, is to put everything up front in a roll. But I won't be using, typically, everything that I just mentioned comes with its own stuff sack. But if you try to put 5 different stuff sacks inside one stuff sack, you end up taking up a lot of your volume. It's easier to just stuff all of those things into one stuff sack.
I almost never use the tent sack.
Yeah.
The tents always go into another bag I'm using. Is ultimately what ends up happening.
And then I usually put everything, because I think my handlebar bag is a 14 liter. And what I'll do is I'll load everything in there. The stuff that's at the very bottom of the bag will be the last thing I need, like pillow and maybe a sleeping bag liner or sleeping bag. And then it'll go pad, tent. But I can't wait one of the hacks that I saw was connecting all of the four corners with the tent and the rainfly and the ground sheet together. I think, what's that guy's name, Kevin? Tristan
And Stewart?
Is that right? Tristan.
No, that's a Tristan Ridley.
That's
Ridley.
it, Ridley, yeah. I
It
saw
was Tristan.
Yeah, I saw his.
Kristen Stewart's the girl from Twilight. Ignore me.
I don't even want to know why you know that.
Daughters.
But I saw that and I was like, oh my God, that's so smart. Like, I didn't even, I would have eventually thought about that, but I did notice a couple of times that I've taken it up and putting it down, just thinking about having tired brain at the end of the day. And it's that one corner where the vestibule is, where you're like, oh wait, where is that? And so I was like, once I saw him connect those, I was like, that's brilliant. But I want to figure out a way where I can do it not on a semi-permanent basis, because I think he had it done with cordage. And I want to do it with something else. It would be super cool, just an idea, to have your magnets that you have for your vestibule opening on the little clips themselves, so they stay attached. Although that may be a nightmare when you put it in a stuff sack and then they're all stuck together, or even if they're color coded. But I just think about after riding 100 miles a day and then trying to set up your tent. That's why I was so stoked that I could just tag all four corners together, spread it out, even if it's windy, stake it down, deploy the pole, erect it, and I'm good to go. I was like, that's so Cadillac. It's going to be awesome.
So along those lines, Dan, real quick, an actual question for you. What was your motivation to go with the shorter poles to begin with? It's not an industry standard by any stretch, is it?
Yeah, the first version of the tent has obviously we had the regular poles, and then the reasoning there, I think for a backpacker, they care about, both of our user groups care about weight and volume, but the priorities are we're going to have a lot of tongue twisters on this, but in backpacking, weight's a little more important. You care about volume too, but weight is the bigger one. And it may be a little bit, I'm not sure about your world, but even or flip the other way where you do care about weight, but volume is the bigger one. I'm not quite sure how those stack, but they're probably
it varies by the riders.
Yeah.
Volume is always a big concern, but we definitely have riders that are just absolute weight weenies. So every half gram matters. There's no doubt about that. But volume is always a consideration. There's no doubt.
Speaking of which, I finally weighed my loaded out bike for hut to hut.
Okay.
And
roll, please.
I was way off.
Dave Roll gave an over under of 43 pounds, which I liked better.
Pretty damn close. It was 42 pounds.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, Shannon was like, have you weighed your bike yet? And I go, no, I actually totally forgot. So.
And what'd you say? You thought it was going to be 32, right?
Yeah, I'm crazy. That was ambitious, but.
So that gives you some reference point there, Dan. Brad is not a weight weenie, but he is definitely weight conscious, weight aware. I think it would be fair. And so, including a bicycle, a steel bicycle, not even a carbon bicycle, and all of his stuff for a mostly packed out trip. He's doing hut to hut, so he doesn't have to carry a tent and bag
or a cook system.
Hey, cook system's always flexible.
But I mean, I'm not carrying a cook system, not even for coffee or anything.
So he's 42 pounds of gear and bike at that point. So you throw everything else on there, you're still well under 50.
Yeah. But that's also, I haven't put a water filter on there either, because I'm still oscillating on that. I don't know if I'm going to carry a water filter or not, but so Kevin always gives me crap, but weight is always a consideration, but it's not top priority. And I guess volume isn't really the main priority. It's about how something packs. Like, I have some stuff that takes up space, but it fits perfectly into a niche. Like, my whole cook system fits in a 750 mil titanium Tokes cup.
Nice.
I don't know. Weight is probably the ultimate consideration, but volume is I guess it vacillates on which one's more important. But I'm not going to carry a 0-degree bag that weighs 4 pounds, but I'm also not to bike pack when it's like that too. So
yeah, that makes sense.
But just having a capable tent makes me more interested in backpacking now. So I may end up backdooring the sport by just happenstance. I've done some backpacking when I was dealing with an elbow injury and re-injury, and I wasn't able to ride. I did some hikes and camping trips and stuff, but as soon as I was able to get back on the bike, I was like, biking is where my passion is.
How do you chiefly use your gear, Dan? I assume you're an outdoorsman if you're so intrigued by designing tents and things like that. How do you go out and have fun in the woods?
Yeah, I started as what you might call a traditional backpacker. This was 20, 25 years ago with just a big backpack that could weigh 50 pounds. And you do it, but it's not that fun because every step of the way is just a grunt and you don't get that far. And it's good to get out, but it's not like particularly enjoyable just because of how onerous it is. And then when I discovered Ultralight, which was about in 2008, and Ultralight, I think it resonated with me on a few levels, but one is that it's analytical. It's like now you got a spreadsheet, you're working towards a goal. You can even when you're not out doing the activity, you can sit there and plan.
Yeah.
So it appeals to
geek
that.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. It just appeals to the geek side. And then it also just actually makes the activity better because instead of grunting your way down the trail, it's just a lot more enjoyable to have a reasonable backpack. It's not chafing and making your shoulder sore and all that nearly as much. So that's where I got into it. And then as you start getting into that, you start thinking about challenging yourself and going faster and further. And so I've done a bunch of long hikes. I did the best known one is the Pacific Crest Trail right up the states.
Yeah.
California, Oregon, Washington. That's 2,600 miles. That was just over a decade ago. And then I've done some other big hikes in Canada. And I've done some bunch of trips in Montana. Those are sort of like semi races, but sort of a wilderness race where it's not just pure physical. It's like navigational skill and route planning and strategic decisions and things like that. So it's a little more interesting than just purely physically suffering.
How long did
so that's where I come into it, is just from a ultralight weight nerd perspective, but also because I am doing a lot of trips here in the Canadian Rockies and in real mountain terrain. It's a big thing for us is what I call weight efficiency. So there's some people that would just say weight at all costs, like buy whichever one is the lightest. If there's two choices and one's lighter, you choose it. It's just, who cares, what you're giving up. Whereas with weight efficiency, we're really trying to optimize the amount of function, protection, benefit that you have for that weight. So it may not be the lightest, but it would be something where it tends to be pretty light, pretty close to the lightest, while offering a high amount of function. Because oftentimes with gear design, there's diminishing returns where to save that last little bit of weight, you've got to really start chopping things that you don't really want to chop.
Agreed.
Like on a tent, you could chop off the vents, for example, and some brands do that, but you're only saving 10 grams or something, and then you get more condensation, and you're out on that sort of last little edge of what you can do. And so what we try to do is save weight through a few different ways. I call it efficient design. So we're looking at things like shapes and minimizing seams and the way we can put everything together to not use more material. There's often just clever ways you can do something. For example, most of our, like the X-Dome, the tent here is based around a rectangle rather than a hexagon. So you've just got fewer seams. You've just brought more simplicity into the tent. And then we try to combine that efficient design with what I call advanced materials. Like we're using a carbon fiber tent poles that are just stronger and lighter. So you're getting a better benefit for the weight with those. So we do all those things, and we try to pack it together in a package that's going to be pretty close to the lightest. Some of our gear is the lightest. Like we have the lightest in our X-Mid series, which sets up with your hiking poles, which tends to be less suitable for bike packers. We do still have a folding
We
pole.
usually don't have trekking poles with us.
We do sell a folding pole that people can use, but still, it's more of a trade-off. You do save some weight with that, but then you've got to still stake out the tent. So there's a bit more of an effort involvement, and it's if somebody wants to put that effort. But that tent in the lightest version is the lightest world. I think it's the world's lightest. It depends how you count it. Like what really counts as a tent. When you get to these pretty weird contraptions that blur the line between a tarp and a tent, who's to say? But I would say in my definition, it's the world's lightest tent that fits 2 wide pads. And then we also have the world's lightest adjustable trekking poles and some other gear. Whereas the X-Dome tent here, the one that you've got, is not like a world's lightest, but it really offers a high amount of space, protection, function. It's double wall.
Yeah.
It's super spacious, and it's got all those features that I think are really important, like a fly first pitch, protected doorways, non-sag fabric, so that any tent basically works. Kind of the way I say it is, any tent basically works if you don't need a tent. If it's beautiful sunny weather, it's like, of course, anything's going to be a good experience when you don't actually need a tent. But when it's actually tough conditions, that's where it starts to separate things, and that's where you appreciate the functionality and protection that's built into that. So we think it really hits a sweet spot on that just balance between weight and protection. I think everyone's going to say their gear is this like perfect balance, but I like to think that we do a good job of that.
Well, I will say, like, you hit on a lot of things that were my consideration. Like, weight wasn't the most important thing. It was, I plan on Race Across Texas taking me 8 days, and I plan on sleeping in that tent every night. And I hope this doesn't happen, but in the event that I wake up one morning and it's raining and I have to spend, 4 or 5 hours in my tent or trying to cook under the vestibule, I don't want to be in a classic 1-person ultralight tent that you can't even turn over in. So that was a consideration. Like, what'd you call it? Economic of material or
weight efficiency?
Weight efficiency, yeah. So I there was no pun intended, but I was weighing all of the aspects of different tents. And like I said, when I found your tent, I was like, this is the one. And then, like I said, once I got it and opened it up and set it up, I was like, this is exactly what I want. So, and pack it into a bag and putting it on the bike and just checking out how it sits and everything. I was like, you couldn't have hit the nail anymore on the head.
So while you were doing these adventures, and I know Brad asked and we didn't quite get the answer, how long did it take you to do PCT, did you say?
It was right about 4.5 months.
4.5 months for 2,600 miles, right?
Yeah, you're doing 25 miles a day, so it's
Okay.
110 days, something like that.
So, any off days?
Once in a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you came out of that and decided you need to start making tents, or you were already working for somebody that did this already, or how did you get to where Durston tents became a thing?
Yeah, that's a really like a fluky, weird, crazy thing, because I did not intend to make tents. Where it happened was I'm just an enthusiast like you guys, just geeking out on the activity, having fun, nerding out, tinkering. I was making some of my own stuff. I made a tarp and I had made some backpacks and some clothing, and just being a giant nerd, you just make stuff how you want it to be. And then when I was on the PCT in 2014, I was thinking about tents and just how I was having very different experiences on different types of tents. More specifically, this one tent I had was just a pyramid. And so you stake out a rectangle, extend your one pole in the middle. And I had such a simple experience with that, where I really valued how simple it was. But then I didn't have a great experience so I had a good pitching experience, but I didn't have a great experience in the tent because there's not actually a lot of space in those tents because they just taper into one high point. You can't even sit there because the pole's there. It's fine, but you're feeling like for a backpacker, you've got 2 hiking poles. So you're like, why am I only using one of these 2 poles? Like, it's got to be something I can do to make it better. The other type of tents are these 2-pole tents. There's all sorts of, the whole landscape of trekking pole tents, a million different designs, and lots of great tents. But what they tend to be is a lot more complicated. And once you've got them up and pitched, they're great. But you've got a lot of downsides with pitching complexity because they're 6, 7, 8 sided. You need guy lines, you need struts, you need hoops sometimes, a little more stakes. And so it's sort of fun when the weather's good and all that. But then when the weather's bad, you're just like, this kind of just sucks that you have this whole project. So I just knew that I really valued the simplicity of the pyramid tent. And I was thinking about how to achieve that. And then a few years later, we were doing a big hike, my wife and I, for 4 months in the Canadian Rockies. We hiked all the way up the main part of the Canadian Rockies and back, 1,400 miles roughly that was. And I started thinking about tent design again. In between, I had been in school, so you're busy, and it's really when you get those long days in the outdoors that you can think about nerding out. So I thought about this again, and originally I was thinking about how do I make the pyramid better for space with like struts or hoops or guidelines, but everything was just sort of adding the complexity that it was adding was taking away from. I was improving the space, but I was adding complexity, and so that balance where you're trying to achieve more space without reducing complexity was elusive. But eventually, I had this idea on the trail where I realized that I focused in. I said, it's got to be 2 hiking poles because that's what I got. Right now I'm using 1. I got to use 2. How do I get them in there? They can't be along the perimeter because I'll have flat walls that need guidelines. Can't be in the center because they're then they're at the same spot. They're not really doing anything. So I need the 2 poles sort of medium apart. How do I get 2 poles in a rectangle and still sleep in that rectangle? And once you get down to that, then you realize, oh, well, they could be on a diagonal and I could sleep between them. So that's what we call the X mid geometry. That's our trekking pole tent geometry. And I just thought of it as like, oh, I'm going to maybe, if I get some time, try to build one for myself. And I had no commercial aspirations. But after the hike, the only sort of commercial-ish thing about that hike was that some company had given me a free pair of hiking poles on that trip. And I had to do a review on them on my blog. What's that? Yeah.
I said, score.
Yeah, so they'd give me these poles, and then after the hike, I said, hey, I wrote a review on the blog, it's good. And then they just reached out and they said that they were looking to build new gear and were looking for ideas, not a tent, just like a pot or something. And I was like, well, I thought of this tent. I think it'd be pretty cool. Like, I've never made a tent, but I think tent should be like this with 2 poles on all these angles. And it was a crazy opportunity because they just basically took a chance on a random unknown guy that had never built a tent before, and they funded the project and found a factory and had some staff that knew how to manage projects. And all I had to do was bring this idea and sort of send some kind of bad drawings to the factory, and they would make me a tent, and we iterated. And this was 2018, 7 years ago now. We iterated that tent, came out, and people were really excited about it. Partly, I think it's a good tent. Partly, I think that I'm pretty passionate about it, so we support it. We're involved in the community. We listen to people. We incorporate feedback. We help everyone out. So it's a good sort of community around the product as well. So that was our trekking pole tent. Came out in 2018, it's gotten exceptionally popular. It's one of the most popular tents on the long trails now. And then the obvious next step in the tent world for us was always a freestanding tent, where I felt like this design had a lot of benefits for there as well, just for different reasons. Like one of the things that it solves in the trekking pole design is like not having a pole right in front of your door because it's to the side. That's not really relevant in the freestanding tent design, but it does solve other things like how a key issue with tents in North America is that most of them are what you might call a native inner first pitch, where the interior connects to the poles. You set all that up and then you throw the fly over top. There are ways of pitching them fly first, but they're not the natural way. So you need to know an extra technique. You need to sometimes bring a ground sheet, clip the poles to that. It's a whole different process that's not intuitive from how you normally do it. And so in the reality, when it starts raining, nobody remembers how to do it, and you just sort of go quickly and try to throw the fly on, and it sort of works. But this design where everything was based around a simpler rectangle also worked because a unique thing with this tent is the fly, the interior, and the poles all go to the same 4 points. Most tents have a hexagonal fly, so the poles in the interior go to 4, but the fly goes to 6. And that's why you can't really pitch them fly first, because that hexagonal, the geometry is complicated, but it pops out of shape basically because they're not a straight line of fabric between the pole corners. Yeah. So this enabled some neat things with the tent where it naturally pitches fly first, but it also almost just as easily pitches inner first, and you can pitch it separate or together. You could pitch it any which way you like it. So that was one of the key advantages. And then it also, with a single person tent like the One Plus, what you'll find, most tents on the market are based around a hexagon where you got a rectangle floor and then you got a triangle vestibule on one or maybe both sides. And that tends to have some downsides because if you just put the vestibule on one side, then you have a 5-sided pentagon-shaped tent. It's asymmetrical and it's not as good in the wind. But if you put a vestibule on the second side, that's fine, but you arguably don't need 2 vestibules. You'd rather have one bigger one than 2 small ones. So a nice thing with this design is the way that we've done it is you get one bigger vestibule. It's not in front of the door. So like the main advantages are like kind of things I've said about fly first, pitch, and all those things, but all the things I've already said. But another one is how the vestibule is not blocking the door. It's not, the deepest point isn't right in the center, but it's off to the side. So you can store a backpack. You might even, I'll have to ask you guys more about this, but you can sort of, I think, take the wheels off and maybe get a bike in there. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't tried it. But it sounds like
wouldn't be at the top of my list of desires, to be honest with you. But I know there are some bike packing tents out there that's a supposed feature of. But if I were you, I wouldn't worry about that aspect.
You wouldn't worry about it
too much.
No, I would say that I could speak for most bike packers and say the last thing you want to do is take your wheel off if you don't have to.
Okay, so keeping the wheels on, this is great to like get some feedback from you guys.
Yeah,
sure.
Keeping the wheels on is preferred over getting your bike out of the rain if it's raining. You'd rather just go outside?
About my bike
We're riding
getting wet.
in the rain anyway, so
yeah, I'm not worried about my bike getting wet.
Or like critters chewing on the seat or something. That's not a thing.
No,
that it happens.
The only thing I've experienced is leaving my bike bag, like my frame bag, open and having food in it and having ants and stuff crawling all over my bike in the morning.
Yeah, we don't have marmots in Texas.
Yeah,
so.
we don't have, and where I was, we don't have bears and stuff, so we were not carrying like bear cans and stuff like that. So
okay, that's interesting. Yeah, we've had a couple of people ask us about that, and I've never actually tried it because I'm not really in that world. But
yeah.
That's interesting. Helpful to know that it's just a small proportion of those people.
I mean, for what it's worth, I'm under the impression that like Big Agnes has some tents with some of those sorts of features to them for the bike packing specific crowd. And I think they discontinued all their bike packing tents.
Yeah,
so
it's niche on niche on niche. You'd be easier to do a Venn diagram of ultralight through hiking tents and bike packing tents, you know.
Yeah,
they're going to be in the same space. I don't, other than the short pole aspect, which I think lends super well to bike packing, especially in theory. Most people, like bike packers, would gravitate towards that just on paper. But I think that for the most part, a great ultralight tent is going to make a great bike packing tent. But like I said, I like the space of the way that tent is set up. And, you know, I didn't even touch on the fact that the other thing is it's fly first. I mean, it's brilliant.
And quite frankly, the One Plus design is ideal for most bike packers. The bike packing crowd, generally speaking, most people aren't bike packing for weeks at a time. It's really more of a casual tent camper thing where they do 2 or 3 nights a few times a year sort of thing. So just a simple freestanding tent makes a big difference in that scenario. And generally speaking, like when it's 5 feet of snow and you need, crampons or something like that, you're not going to be riding a bike in that situation.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, bike packers are more of a fair weather outdoors person, generally speaking. Not perfect weather, but they're not going to be out there when the weather is at its most extreme.
Yeah, I would say that bike packing and backpacking probably have the same similar niches, except for a lot of bike packers don't just go out and do an overnighter, just a single overnighter. You know, I would imagine that you have a couple of different backpacks, like a 2 to 3 nighter, and then you might have like because, you know, when you pack for 1 night, it's just as easy to pack for 3 nights, you know, and then once you get past 3 nights, it's a little bit different dynamic about food and resupply and all those considerations. And I think that bike packers are kind of fall into that same category too. There's There's the guys that'll do 2-3 nights, maybe 4 nights, and then beyond that, it's like week plus, and it's multiple niches within a niche, you know. But I feel like that backpacking kind of breaks down into those same kind of subcategories as well. And then you get the ultralight through hiking crowd is a whole nother thing, and that's like the Tristan Ridley guy, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been out there for years, I think.
Yeah. And he's not the typical bikepacking demographic. You know, he's an outlier. So
That's an understatement.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I was trying to be generous.
For tents, like I appreciate all like the experience and context you guys have. For tents, obviously that there's some value in the pack size, shape, dimensions, and then we've heard that the putting your bike in the vestibules is not a major attraction. Is there anything else about a tent that would make it better suited for bikepacking? I can't think of anything, but are there any needs bikepackers have?
I'm going to throw one at you, and this isn't me throwing shade. Okay, oh, actually, nice little pun there. But when Brad got his tent, the first thing that I latched onto, and granted, Texas is not British Columbia. I get that. There's no doubt about that. But like my ideal situation for camping in Texas, New Mexico, Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, stuff like that, we may have a freezing overnight here and there sort of thing, but we're rarely in it. We need as much cross ventilation as possible.
Yeah.
For hot and steamy nights, because at 78 degrees doesn't sound terrible, whatever that translates to on the Celsius side of things.
Yeah, 24.
But when it's 80% humidity at the same time and no breeze.
Yeah.
So like my ideal Durston tent would be the One Plus, but like a full mesh and a second vestibule or something that opened up that other side for full ventilation sort of thing.
Yeah, like a hybrid between the 2 and the One Plus, basically.
Yeah.
And you're the tent designer, so I'm not saying, because I get what you're saying. We don't want to turn it into a hexagon or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But is there another way to create more ventilation?
That's going to be an extra 48 grams, Kevin.
I know that strip of Velcro or a zipper or what, I don't know. Yeah. But anyway. Let me ask you that full mesh. Is there a downside to a full mesh inner like that?
Yeah. So there's a kind of two parts to this. There's like how much mesh, and then there's like a second door. The mesh is an interesting one. It's something where we're having a hard time pleasing everybody because people in hot areas want all mesh. People in cold areas want all solid. A lot of people that do a mix, sort of like what we've done on the regular, where there's just a little lower part of solid just to block. That's there so that it can block drafts under the fly edge, but also if you're getting heavy rain that's splattering a little bit, it's going to help block that. So that's sort of trying to strike an all-around balance, but certainly it's then, because it's an all-around balance, it's not optimized for those warmer conditions. We do have an all-mesh interior for the X-Mid, our trekking pole tent. So it's kind of interesting because these two different facets that we talked about are actually different on my two tents. On the trekking pole tent, we have pure mesh, and then we have a little bit of solid fabric on the X Dome, and we don't. It's sort of like either way, you're covering a good 60% of the spectrum, but there's going to be people that land outside of that. We almost need three interiors. Right now we have two, like the bit of solid, full solid. We kind of need like an all mesh, a half mesh, and a no mesh. Probably then you'd almost have everyone happy. But even then, some people just want solid on top and not the sides, and other sides. So it's hard.
You can't please everybody.
Yeah, particularly when I'm in the mix.
Yeah.
I looked at that. I looked at the 2-person. It's like, that's almost perfect for me because the double vestibule, but the packability is going to be too much.
I will tell you that the one night that Kevin and I went out and tested equipment without...
Brad had to sleep in that tent as soon as he possibly could.
Yeah, I did. And it was miserable, but it wasn't because of the tent. It was just because it was only got down to 78 degrees that night, and we were sleeping next to the lake. But I will tell you that it was fine when we were outside. There was a breeze, and I thought I was set up good, and I got in there and I laid down and I was like, this isn't going to work. But I will tell you that I tried to calm myself down and relax and be like, okay, as soon as you relax, you'll cool down. And it didn't happen, but I'll tell you that I got out and it was super intuitive. I took basically the corner that's opposite the vestibule, and I pulled the tent pole up and unclipped it, and then reached in and unclipped the tent from the inside of the rainfly, and then slid the rainfly up and then clipped the tent on, so it allowed some cross draft that way. It was very intuitive, and I was like, it made a big difference. So I guess that was part of the intent of the way it was designed, or it was just a happy accident. But
Yeah,
either way,
it's sort of in between, because I definitely wanted to be able to do an interior only pitch where you don't even have the fly, you just clip the interior up. And then
Sure.
once we did that, it actually became not like a either or, but it became a spectrum essentially, where you can just roll the fly back one clip or two or three, just roll it as much as you want, half off.
Yeah.
On the One Plus, that is the best way to get airflow. Like, you can have the door open, and then on the other side, you could roll back the corner one clip or two clips. We show some of that in our pitching guide video under, I think, the inner only section.
Yeah.
So that's a good mix. Where I'm hesitant to put, so on the X Mid 1, our trekking pole tent, we do have a door on both sides, but it's because there's a vestibule on both sides. It's basically symmetrical. If we put a door on the X Dome on the other side, it's going to be, I worry it's going to be confusing for people, because they pitch the tent, they can't actually see where the interior is because it's clipped inside, and then they open the door and they don't know if they're on which side they're on, like with or without the vestibule. So they could have the whole thing and then have to spin it around. So for that reason of wanting to keep both sides, or wanting to avoid confusion, there's the one door and then you can clip the corner back. Whereas on the two-person, we actually have a second vestibule. So then there's a second door, and then both sides are the same. And so that somebody wants two doors, it's really the two-person that's the only one that's going to do that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was I had it in my shopping cart, and I just couldn't pull the trigger on that one, because Brad will tell you that at heart, I am a cheap bastard. No doubt about it. But that said, I do appreciate the finer things in life. And that's one of the things I like. I mean, you guys have a lot of bang for the buck with your direct model. The One Plus at what, $370 US?
It's
or something?
$379. Yeah. So we're in a nice position as a company, because what we can do is avoid that retailer markup, and then we can put some of that into making a higher end product and some of it into a better price.
Yeah, so I mean, realistically, that's a $600 or $700 tent at the retail level, if not more, with the carbon poles and everything. Right?
Yeah. If you got the same thing from like MSR, Big Agnes, it would cost more. Even just with aluminum, it would still cost more. Like in aluminum, it might be $499 for like an MSR hubba with aluminum or something like that. We are considering adding a more affordable option that's not the carbon. We really like to make the best stuff. So it's like, I'm a believer in the carbon, because you do get that higher performance for the weight, and you pay for it once, but then you get the benefit of a lighter product forever.
Yeah, we call it buy once, cry once.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at, but I do know that a lot of people like aluminum for a bunch of reasons, and so we are considering adding an aluminum version that would probably be down more at like $299 instead of $379, because the carbon poles do add quite a bit of cost to that.
Yeah,
no doubt.
You guys are doing something right, because you just stay sold out.
I was about to say, you're not going to have to worry about it for a while, right? Yeah. At your current pace, you guys are sold out with every batch, probably for the next year or two at least, right?
It's at least for like right now we are, for sure. We're selling a lot of them. There's a ton of interest. There's also just some we want to grow at a healthy rate, because if we just said, wow, everybody wants this, we're going to build just a mountain of them.
Let me get a whole boat of tents sent my way.
Yeah. We'd have like all sorts of issues with like customer support, where like our shipping team would have a hard time shipping that, and our customer support, people just, whatever reason, people's package gets lost or gets a rip or whatever. But we just want to kind of grow at a good rate so that we can stay after things and provide customers with good support. And for the product too, if there's like some things like that tent was in development for 3 or 4 years, but still, like, once you put it on the market and start getting them into everybody's hands, there's all sorts of feedback and suggestions. So we've like that, we still make little tweaks. Like on your tent, we we color coded the zipper pulls so people could tell them apart a little easier. We made the foot end a little wider because people wanted to fit a little bigger pads in there, and we're just always tweaking the tent. And then once it's been a little longer and we're like running out of things to tweak and we are sure that there's no little quirks or anything, then we can kind of open the throttle a little more on how we need to build.
Yeah. I respect that. I mean, I all that makes sense. Like, you don't want to just order 20,000 of them and then realize, oh shit, this zipper's not right or something like that. Or, or you get some feedback and you're like, damn, why did I not think of that? And now you're like, oh, we got to wait till we sell all of these before I make this little tweak or whatever. So I respect that tremendously. Well, that being said, where is the majority of your market? Is it, you guys selling a lot in Canada? Are you selling in United States or abroad or what?
We're based in Canada, but US is the big one. That's about 60%. Canada's about 10. Yeah. And then we see a lot of interest in Europe. It'd be roughly 20% there. And then the rest, whatever, the last 10%, bunch is Australia and Japan, Korea.
Yeah.
So it's pretty all over the world. It's neat to see, like, obviously I speak English and I know how to talk to customers in North America. But then you like go on these like Korean websites and they're talking about it and you're like, you got to translate it. And it's harder to engage because you're like, I can answer this question, but when I translate it, I'm not even sure if like the tone is going to come across right or something like that. But
that's got to be so cool, man. I'm so stoked for you. The bottom line is just keep doing what you're doing. You obviously have a great vision for it and you make great products. I have very little feedback on my tent. Obviously, I haven't spent a lot of time with it, but I can't wait for October to get here so I can sleep in it for 8 nights. So,
what about, here's another bikepacker question. What about color? Do people like, in the backpacking world, it's the sort of torn between people who like a subtle tent that fits in and feels natural and people who like a bright tent because it pops in photos and if they need to be rescued, people can see it. Is that the same thing?
I'm going to be in a different world here because I do a fair share of what we call bandit camping.
Yeah, stealth is strength.
Stealth camping. So the rain flies on all my hammocks are camo.
Okay.
And with a rain fly deployed on a hammock, you can't see anything. So it doesn't matter what color your hammock is, it matters what color your rain fly is. And as long as it's cool enough to run a rain fly, which think about just a triangular or a rectangular tarp that's thrown over a ridge line and comes down almost all the way to the ground. Once you get in there and get in your hammock, nobody can see anything. I'm of the mind, like, I want to blend into the background. How about that?
And is that most people think that way, or is it the world pretty split too, where people are out there in orange tents? And
I don't know too many people that are looking for the neon tents in the bikepacking world. If there's a predominance, it's going to be people that are going to lean towards stealth and blending in.
Yeah.
Probably that 45 to 60% of the market range would be my guess.
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody that wants their hot pink with purple stripes one. That's always going to be out there. Ooh, that would be kind of snazzy now that I think about it.
But we'll make you one.
I'll take it.
Are you familiar with Dutch Wear?
Yeah,
he's been going for like 10 years. That's who I have all of my hammock stuff through. And I know it's a totally different program, and I don't know what his production's like, but it just made me think, like, you can literally do custom colors with him. You can order your hammock however you want it, whatever length, and not whatever length, but he's got a couple of different lengths and models and stuff, and then you can choose your fabric and you can choose your colors and stuff. I don't know if that's even something you could even offer, but if you're worried about what color people want, maybe you charge them an upcharge. I'm sure somebody would pay an extra $100 for a custom color.
Yeah, they would. The big thing for us is what I call agility, but we just really value always innovating and improving and incorporating feedback. And so if we have one color, then as soon as it's sold out, we can next version, we can always do it better. If we come out with a color and the color kind of bombs, it's yellow and nobody wants it.
Yeah.
Then you're like, now in the main color, do we launch the next version? But then now the yellow is ugly and it's the old version. So it's definitely not going to sell. Right. Or do we not open the new version and just only sell yellow tents until, obviously we would probably do yellow, but it just ties your hands a little bit.
You can't go wrong with teal. Teal wins. Teal wins every time.
Yeah.
Brad says he would go stealth unless you had teal. Anything teal, he'll pay the upcharge for.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Teal is my jam. That's my spirit color.
Yeah, you got a bit on the hat there. It's nice.
Yeah.
So, well, we never bridged the gap. So you said you were noodling the concepts for tents in your head while you're out on the trail yourself. You were in school at the time, and then you go out and start your own business building tents. What were you going to school for? I assume it was engineering or something like that. Probably not basket weaving. And 2, was there a profession bridge in between there, or did you just go in to start doing your own thing?
Yeah, I mean, my background's in biology, environmental stuff. I did a degree.
That makes all the sense in the world. Yes.
I did a degree in environmental studies, which was good, but I wanted to be a little more in like science, and that was a little more wishy-washy environment stuff. So I went back to school and did another undergrad in biology. Then we hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, and then I did my master's in biology. So for a couple of years, you're just deep in the research. I was studying fish and water quality. Finally finished the master's, did the second long hike where I had the idea for our first tent. And then right after that hike, I got a job. So my life started like the 2 main paths right at the same time, because I finished that hike, started a real career in biology, and had this little side gig of the tent where this company had reached out. And I said, well, that's true. I was just going to sew one, but at the time I naively thought it'd be easier just to provide them with a few drawings and they'd have a factory make one for me. So both of those started at the same time. And then that was 2018, and the tents really took off a little bit before COVID, but especially during COVID. And we released the tent and the 2-person model and the super light model and also a backpack. All of that was just licensed. Like my idea is licensed to this company where I design it, but they were really funding and fulfilling and everything. And long story short, they ended up getting out of the outdoor space. All the rights came back to me. And then around 2022 is when we became essentially a pretty normal company. I actually launched, I actually had to come up with money to fund production and actually come up with a website that can sell stuff and ship orders and all that kind of stuff. So that was 2022. We all came over to me. It was really turning into a real business. And then I left biology at that time. I was just working as a biologist, and it was just, for a while, it was kind of 2 jobs. It was really busy. It still is really busy, but yeah, there was just this tent thing just grew and grew from me just thinking I was going to get a tent that was easier for a factory to build than me to sew. And then eventually it became such a big thing. I'm kind of a conservative guy, like financially and things like that. So I never would have just I'm starting a business. I'm I just went to school for 6 years for biology. I'm not going to just leave it and throw it all to the wind and try to start a company or something. But because they just emailed me and were taking on all the risk and hard stuff, I was like, sure, we'll make some gear.
That's a nice gig if you can fall into that one.
Yeah, it was just a moment in time that really was a fluky thing, because I wouldn't have started it.
And you brought up the COVID angle on the outdoors industry. Were you guys taking off pretty well and being accepted really well prior to COVID, or was it just that influx of the COVID outdoors business that really brought you forward to the market?
Yeah, that was an interesting time. We were taking off a bit before that. We launched in 2018. The 1-person tent was well received, and we added a 2-person in 2019, and that was really well received. And it was sort of like fall 2019, we were really seeing a lot of interest growing and selling out. And then we're beginning of 2020, the COVID started, and that was a mixed bag for us. At the time, it seemed like a really bad thing because we were already selling out. And we had the problem that my original partners weren't sure if they wanted to be in the outdoor space. So COVID happens, all the factories are booking up, every capacity's limited. You got to act now if you want anything. And the former partner was, well, we don't know. We're not sure what we're doing. So then they were ordering less. Even though the tents were taking off, they weren't even sure they wanted to keep making them, just because they weren't sure they wanted to be in the outdoor space. So we ended up really limited in 2020. We had a few batches of a few hundred tents, and they sold out in a minute, that sort of thing. So it poured gas on that fire where they were already selling out. And then maybe it was a good thing for scarcity, but we were already sort of selling out, and it just sort of put a lot of angry people that couldn't get one.
Yeah, that whole scarcity approach. I've met very few people that were successful with it when that was the intention.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I don't know what. We just sort of tried to keep everyone happy, and it wasn't easy, but finally we made it through that. And we've mostly had the tents available for the last couple of years, but still we're conservative with ordering. Like, I don't want to, we're growing at a pretty good rate, and I don't want to, oh, we're going to grow huge and order a ton of stuff, and then we don't, and I'm stuck with stuff. So we kind of run it a little bit conservative and just don't get, don't.
How
get
many
over
batches of the X Dome have you done so far?
There's been, in the one person, I think there's been about 4.
Okay, 4.
We had
4
the first
separate
one right
batches.
at the end of 2024, and then we had sort of April this year and June, and then we're just launching the 4th one. We had a sale last week.
Yeah.
So that was...
I'm stoked for you guys. I'm beyond stoked for you guys.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Like, we're just... One of the cool things about it is we are like a true grassroots company where we don't advertise. We don't have anybody that works in marketing. I just make the website myself. We just sort of try to do what we would want. Like, how, if I was a customer, how I'd want a company to do, just like treat people well, answer emails, it'd be responsive, listen to feedback, and then try to make a product that's like good enough that people are just excited and want to tell people, and rather than try to
What a novel concept. What a novel concept. Just stay true to what you think customers want, and treat them like you would want to be treated. That sounds...
Yeah, we're trying. Sometimes we get a lot of email, so it's a little...
Yeah.
I can't answer everyone's email anymore, which was like something I always tried to do. But for a while there, I'd get into the office at 7 a.m. and I'd just do email till 3 o'clock, 8 hours of straight email. And then maybe you got 2 hours into the day to do something.
Yeah, that's tough.
So
do you have
any trips coming up for yourself, Dan?
I'm on a little bit of a project here in the Canadian Rockies where I'm trying to hike all the old historic trails. It's a terrible project because these are trails that have gone off the maps, sometimes 50. Like the other week, I was hiking a trail that went in 1915 and was abandoned in the 30s. They machine built it so you could sort of see it on the ground, but it's completely choked with vegetation. Like, it's easier to walk in the forest beside it than to walk on it. I like the history, so it's fun, but I've been doing some of that, but I also try to not just do that and try to get some normal hikes in too. So I do have a couple hikes this year that are hopefully going to happen in the next month or so. That just I love the Canadian Rockies. It's just so pretty. So it's a lot of 2-3 night trips, and also some trail building trips. The Great Divide Trail, which is our main trail up the Rockies, where I had that idea for the tent. I volunteer on that and do some trail building at least 1 week a year, sometimes 2 weeks a year. So we go out and build more trail and clear trail, and hopefully do some more of that this year too.
That's awesome.
Do you ever do any traveling for trade shows, conferences, or industry type stuff, things like that?
Yeah, good question. We are going to go to our kind of first event in like 2 weeks. So it's a crazy thing. We are going to PCT Days, the Pacific Crest Trail Days event, I think it's in Oregon. We've never been to something, so I don't know, like, we're like, okay, what do you need to go to an event? Like, everyone's got those little canopy tents, so we had to figure out how to order one of those. Hopefully it's going to be here in time.
You could just sew one.
Yeah.
Because the frames
are bitch about how it's made. You just be like, I can't believe they built this thing like this.
Yeah, renovate it. So we're going to go to that. That's August 14, 15, I think, in Oregon, and that's going to be fun because our tents are popular on that trail. So we'll have hopefully a lot of nice customers and get to meet them. Hopefully not too many upset people. Yeah.
How cool does it feel to see one of your tents in the wild unprompted?
It's super cool. It's still in the surreal stage for me because so much of my hiking is these very remote trails. I've obviously been on trips with one myself and with friends that have them, but in terms of just random people in the wild, I saw my first one about 2 years ago in 2023. So it was like a long time in. And, I was on a trail. I was out really early and came through a campground before anybody had woken up, and there was just one of our tents there. And then last year I went to a campground, and then there was 7 tents and 3 of them were ours. So
that's a good ratio there.
Like, look at this. We're actually like, people actually have our tents, because otherwise it's very surreal because the interactions are so online where you like sell tents and you see sales numbers, but you don't like meet the people as much. You email and stuff, but you don't actually see them in the way that people say that, oh, I saw like all your tents here and there. And people see them in Australia and in Iceland and in Greenland and all that. And so it's neat to actually see them. And I think it's going to be a bit of a shock in 2 weeks at Pacific Crest Trail Days, because there'll be hundreds and hundreds of people there, and there'll be dozens of our tents, and maybe there's 50 or something. So that'll be a bit of a shock to really see like a herd of them in the wild.
That is so cool. Once again, I'm beyond excited for you. I wish you nothing but luck, man.
Thanks, Brad.
Everything all the interviews and stuff and interactions I've seen with you, you seem like an absolute just gem of a man too. So
thanks.
It's people like you that deserve to be successful. Good on you.
Yeah, we appreciate it tremendously. I am going to give you one little nugget of advice. I'm not asking you to abandon the bike packing niche by any stretch of the imagination, but I will say this: it is a niche. It is most assuredly a niche. If you have an inkling to develop product with that group in mind, they will support you. There's no doubt about that. Even if 100% of the market supports you, it's probably, it's not going to be a huge part of your overall market. I'll just leave it at that.
North Face isn't focusing on the bike packing market
for a reason. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's neat to see, like, is there a sense that it's growing quite a bit? It's my sense, but I'm from afar, and like 10 years ago, nobody.
Yeah. It's kind of like through hikers. I would imagine there's through hikers, but they're not the majority of hikers. It's kind of like bike packers, or they're cyclists, but they're not the majority of cyclists. I guess that's the best kind of analogy I could make.
But there are a lot of cyclists that are campers.
Yes.
And if they had a really cool tent, that might be a motivation for them to take their cycling in a more adventurous direction from that point on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of along this. So you rolled out the freestanding tent this year. I mean, I don't expect you to give up any business secrets or anything like that. Is there anything else in the works that maybe I'm not aware of, since I'm not dialed into everything Durston at the moment?
Yeah, we're pretty transparent with all that stuff. With our product line, I like to keep things fairly simple. Like, we don't want to have a ton of products. So we've got essentially the X Mid, that's our trekking pole tent, and it comes in sizes and versions. And then this freestanding tent, the X Dome, is coming in sizes and versions. So we will end up over time fleshing out that lineup more. There'll be more options. Like, we've added the 2-person recently, and the solid interiors and the short poles, and we're going to hopefully add a even lighter Dyneema version next year. We also might add more of it wouldn't really be for bike packers, but more of like a winter version for people that are skiing and that sort of thing. So we'll flesh out those 2 lines. And then we also have our folding poles that people really like. They're called the Z-Flick pole, and we see a ton of interest in those. People setting up the trekking pole tents, whether it's ours or other brands. Those are coming out. And then we're also working on backpacks that aren't really as relevant for the bike packing space. I would be hesitant to do something that was more of a pure bike packing product, like frame bags and things like that, just because I don't know the space well enough. And I feel like with anything, like the sort of the classic stereotype of innovation and ideas is that you're just sort of walking along and you have an epiphany and it's this great idea and you do it. And my opinion is that, like, ideas and great products come more from just hard work, and where you get to know the niche, you learn everything about it, all the limitations and what works and what doesn't, and you can speak in a very geeky manner about, exactly why something should be the way it is. And once you are a giant nerd on something, then you can start to see what's next and start to make improvements. I'm not a giant nerd on bike packing. I could take a stab at it and maybe we do something cool, but I wouldn't think that I could make a better frame bag or something than a company that's immersed in that space. So it wouldn't be anything dedicated bike packing products like that. Wouldn't be anything in our sort of near to medium term. Maybe I'll get the bug maybe we'll have some hire somebody.
I think the tents is if you can develop products with the bike packing market in mind going forward, fantastic. If there's something here that covers everybody, and that happens to be particularly appealing to the bike packing market. That's a win-win for all. Well, something we didn't touch on, a lot of bike packers, and again, going back to they don't spend a whole ton of nights in a tent or on the ground over the course of a year. A lot of them will pack the bivy.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't do bivvies myself. I'm claustrophobic, so I don't, but there's a lot of people, they go the bivvy route and they actually chase themselves out of bike packing because the bivvy sucks so much. But
yeah,
maybe
they're
there's
tough.
something there, a half bivvy, half tent, true one person, not a one plus. Maybe there's something there. I don't know, but
yeah,
just
we
stuff.
could do we're not working on it right now, but a one person version that somehow is just smaller than what we got right now. Some people would prefer that. I enjoy how livable the tent is right now in the One Plus, but there would be people that value the weight. But
I agree with you. I think the One Plus is like almost the ideal size, even if there is a weight air quotes penalty. The extra spaciousness. There's no. I'm not trying to get you to change your product by any stretch of the imagination, but if you had that full mesh tent, yeah, I would have plopped my money down on it. There's no doubt about that. But I also realize I'm the odd man out. That's a me thing. But anyway, Brad, do you have any last questions for Dan? Or Dan, is there anything you had that you wanted to find out from us? I know we've taken up a real good chunk of your time and we appreciate it tremendously.
Yeah, I just appreciate you chatting with us, man. It's been great talking to you. I think I've already said it. I wish you nothing but the best, man. It's been a real pleasure. And
yeah,
if you're ever in Texas, hit us up.
yeah, thank you.
I know you probably don't get down this far south, but we'll treat you right.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been to Texas. I've been around Nevada and Southern California, but I haven't been to Texas.
It's a whole different territory.
No, it sounds like about it.
A lot of going on down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate talking to you guys too. I just love like the grassroots, like, the real people doing the thing. Appreciate hearing like what works for you guys, and all that just connection to the community is really neat.
We most assuredly appreciate your time, Dan. I hope you won't hold it against us if Brad and I bandy about that. We consider you a friend going forward.
Okay.
And throw your name around, and maybe somewhere down the road, maybe we'll have you on another time, or maybe we'll get lucky because, like I said, Brad and I usually record in person. Maybe our paths will cross somewhere in person. We can sit down over a coffee or a hot toddy or something somewhere along the way and have another chat somewhere down the road.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Good luck in Oregon.
Yeah,
thank you.
Best of luck with the show.
Yeah,
I know it's going to go well for you. I don't doubt that at all. I am not going to do our outro music because obviously it doesn't work on this platform, but I am going to ask Brad to do our traditional send off, please.
Should I say go pitch a tent?
And then after you pack the tent,
go ride your bike.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.